Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Aruna here. And I'm going to make sure first thing that we are recording. And we are. So welcome to the webinar today. And I'm going to share my screen with you. So welcome to the webinar today on how to become a kids yoga teacher. And my name is Aruna Humphries, and I'm from Young Yoga Masters. And I just want to give you a little background on what qualifies me to give a webinar like this. So I took my 200-hour yoga teacher training in 1998, and I became a full-time yoga teacher in around 2001. And I've been teaching kids yoga since that time, since 98, in daycare schools, community centers, yoga studios, all over the place. I've been teaching kids yoga. I worked at one Montessori school as their weekly kids yoga teacher for 18 years. And I've taught kids yoga, family yoga, adults and tots yoga. I've taught kids yoga camps. And then around 2005 is when I started running teacher training workshops. And they started with afternoon workshops, built up to a weekend. And then when Yoga Alliance came out with the 95-hour children's yoga training, I registered as a children's yoga school in 2012. And so since 2012, I've been focusing a lot on training teachers and supporting the next generation of yoga teachers, especially teaching kids yoga, coming into the schools and the daycares. So let's just do a quick check if anyone has any trouble hearing me. If you could leave a comment and let me know in the chat whether you can hear me okay or not, so that I have an idea. So there is a little chat in the corner to type a message. And I just typed in there, can you hear me? So let me know if you can hear me. That'd be really helpful. Oh, thank you, Jesse. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have a 95-hour children's yoga school called Young Yoga Masters. And I also am director of a 200-hour Hatha yoga teacher training called Ambassador Yoga. And this is my new project that I'm very excited about, because the idea is to help other experienced yoga teachers train, become trainers in their own 200-hour Hatha yoga teacher training. And this started because I wanted to let kids yoga teachers train their kids as they grew up and became tweens and teens to become yoga teachers. It was inspired by my own teen years when I worked as a lifeguard. And I took swimming lessons all through my childhood. And when I entered my tweens and teens, I took the certification to become a lifeguard. And then, so when I was teaching yoga, I thought, well, why can't kids do the same thing? And so that's what the Hatha Ambassador Yoga training is all about. I know there's a few yoga teachers who signed up for the webinar. That would be something you may be interested in if your kids that you're teaching are getting older and you want to take them all the way through teacher training. There's an option to be supported through that, through our Ambassador Yoga program. So let's begin the webinar. And here's what I wanted to deliver and what you all wanted and signed up for. So let's make sure we cover everything. We have a lot of questions at the end, specifically about what kind of props and how to get into schools and stuff like that. So I'll be trying to answer all your questions in the 40 minutes that Zoom gives us. And if we get over 40 minutes, then I'll just log out of the meeting and log back in and we'll start a new Zoom. Okay? And you don't have to log out though. I think just I have to. So what are the levels of certification for kids yoga teachers? A few people asked this, like, what's the process to become a kids yoga teacher? What's different about a 95-hour training versus the 25-hour training I have? That was Dana. And how to teach or working with children, that's a different focus from adults. So this is probably the most asked question I get at my booth at the Toronto Yoga Show. People just don't know. So what I did was I created this chart to help explain the different levels of certification. So there's various online certifications, and they're what's called non-contact hours. And in non-contact, let me see if I can get the pen out. In the non-contact hours, that means that you're not in the physical presence of your teacher. So a contact hour means that you're actually in the room with your teacher, and a non-contact hour is on the phone, or even this webinar technically does not count as contact hours. So online trainings are non-contact hours, and in the difference between the levels of certification is that in the 95-hour certification that Yoga Alliance suggests, then there are only 8 non-contact hours allowed. So that means the rest of the time you're in the physical presence of one of your lead trainer or another one of your trainers in the school. The other big difference is the practicum hours. So practicum hours means time you spend with your lead trainers, so they're contact hours, with actual children in the room. So if we're in a group right now and we pretend to teach a class to other adults, that is not supposed to count as practicum. And I've talked to Yoga Alliance about this a lot, because it is a lot of work to organize a practicum when you're leading a training. And that's why kids yoga teacher trainings, often they don't bother doing this because it's a lot of work to organize. So the biggest difference is, to get the 95-hour training, they want to know that you have 18 hours of practicum. So you've spent 18 hours with children in the room under the supervision and guidance of your trainers. And someone asked about, like, how is it different than adult yoga? So to give you an idea, a 200-hour adult yoga teacher training only requires 10 hours of practicum. The 95-hour training, the RCYT, Registered Children's Yoga Teacher designation, means that you've done 18 hours of practicum. So when you take a Yoga Alliance registered training, you're going to get a lot of practicum. That's one of the big differences. So 1 in 5 hours is practicum versus 1 in 20 hours in your adult teacher training is practicum. So you're getting a lot of practical experience. That's one of the biggest differences. So sometimes people will get that in a weekend training. In Young Yoga Masters, we have 6 two-day trainings, and in each 2-day training, we have 3 hours of practicum. In other schools, I'm not sure. It would be something I recommend you ask the training. Is there a practicum with actual children present in the room where you get to teach? So in ours, you observe me or one of the trainers teaching for a total of 6 of the 18 hours. And the other 12 hours you're teaching with your colleagues. So it's, when you finish the course, you feel like, most people say they feel like they know what to do because they've taught a whole class from beginning to end. They know how to plan it. They know how to deliver the class. And then kids are kids. And so they face all the classroom management questions that come up when you teach real children. So the different levels of certification are online training, a weekend training, and then there's the 95-hour certificate, which includes, it doesn't have to have 8 contact hours, but the maximum would be 8. The rest is contact hours, and then 18 hours of practicum also with your trainers. The designation of RCYT means that you have your 200-hour adult yoga teacher training plus your 95-hour children's yoga teacher training on top of that. So it means you've done 295 hours of training. There's no shortcut to those hours. If you can't take the 95-hour and count it also towards your 200-hour. It's has to be 295 hours of training. So there's various different levels of certification, and what do you need? Which level do you need? So that's what we're going to look up now. So let me erase all these markings, and we'll go back to the next page. Okay, so how does the 95-hour compare to other trainings? So what does the 95-hour training allow you to do that other trainings do not? So that's a big question. Short-term differences, there's not a lot of difference actually, because you can teach kids yoga without any certification or with no certification. So I find it interesting that people feel like they need some level of certification. In fact, you don't. You don't even need to have an online certificate or anything, because yoga is an unregulated industry. So people usually take a training because they don't know what to do and they want to find out what to do. Who usually wants the RCYT certification is yoga studios and people who are aware of the yoga industry standards. Mostly most people acknowledge the 200-hour training, whether they're for adults, whether they're registered with Yoga Alliance or not. So usually yoga studios, I would say, are the most, but most concerned about the certification. But many places, they just want to see that you know how to handle a kid's yoga class. And that's often, sometimes you don't even ever need to show your certification. So the short-term difference is that you may not get a practicum time with actual children in the other trainings. Sometimes people come to us or I get emails saying like, I'm a certified kids yoga teacher, but I've never actually taught children. And so they don't feel confident to teach. So the short-term difference is whether you feel confident to teach. And that's based on your other experience before taking the training. So if you're an ECE, you're probably pretty comfortable around children, but sometimes someone who's a school teacher or ECE, early childhood educator, is not confident with the yoga part of it. And so that's where the training would come in. But where is the difference? The long-term limitations are becoming a trainer. So if you see yourself going into teaching kids yoga as a business and a long-term career, the time will probably come in, who knows, for me it was 7 years into my teaching that I started offering teacher training to other people in my neighborhood. And the limitation is that you cannot register as a children's yoga school with Yoga Alliance unless you have your designation of registered children's yoga teacher, which means you have your 200-hour training, 1,000 hours of teaching experience, plus your 95-hour children's yoga training. So is that a limitation? In my experience, even though I became a teacher in '98, the school I trained with was registered with Yoga Alliance, but I didn't bother registering with Yoga Alliance until 2012. And that at that time they had something called grandfathering, where I could grandfather in, but fortunately it didn't matter because my school was registered, so they could approve it anyways. But they also let me grandfather in all my teaching hours and experience. So then I could register as a children's yoga school. Now they don't allow grandfathering anymore. So the day you register with Yoga Alliance is when you start accumulating your 1,000 hours of experience. So if you see yourself one day becoming a trainer, then I think that's where it really does make a difference what level of training you have. So I mentioned I had like a weekend training, an afternoon training, it grew into a weekend training. And the reason it grew into the 95-hour training, at first I wasn't going to do it, but then students wanted it. So I had what I called my wag of the finger moment, where a student who had taken my weekend said, well, I want to be registered with Yoga Alliance. I want it. And so I found more and more students wanted it, and that's why I registered. So it may not matter to you, but it may matter to your students, and it may limit you if you have those long-term goals. Okay. And let me tell you a bit about the Young Yoga Masters training, and before we get into your questions. So our training, we have 16-hour modules for a total of 96 contact hours in our training. And when we did expand to the 6 modules, so 6 weekends instead of 1 weekend, it actually was a huge relief once all the manuals were written. Because it was really hard to cover everything in 1 weekend. So with the 6 modules, let me show you a bit about what you're going to get. So with the 6 modules, we have a manual for each module with pictures and coloring pages. This is an example of the Chakras for Children module. Then we have a family yoga manual in this one. This weekend is 3 different modules. And so it gives us a chance to explore 4 hours about how to teach family yoga, 4 hours on chakras for children, and that each one of those includes an hour of practicum. So it's 3 hours of training, and then an hour you teach real children or actual children what you learned. In the class, and so you're fulfilling your practicum and getting confidence that way. We have a module called Themes and Dreams, which explores yoga philosophy, and this one has a lot of songs and meditations in it. We have a module on mindfulness for children, and in this, like, a mindful classroom begins with a mindful teacher. And so one of the things about the 95-hour training, on top of the practicum, there's 20 hours of what's called techniques, training, and practice. And so you're actually learning how to do the mindful activities, and you're learning from experience, which I feel makes a big difference, that rather than just reading about mindfulness in a book, you're being guided through it by your trainer. So you've experienced it, and then from that experience, you can start to teach it. That makes a huge difference for a lot of people. So the Mindfulness for Children has a lot of techniques, training, and practice, as well as the practicum. We have a module called Yoga Literacy. And this one, we explore how to teach the different poses, and we explore, how you teach them in a kid-friendly way, partner yoga poses, and using the yoga alphabet for games. A lot of times people think it's just for children, but it's actually for readers as well, because we have reading games. One of our favorite games is Yoga Wheel of Fortune, where we use the yoga alphabet to give a clue, like in the TV show Wheel of Fortune. And then when children pick a letter that they think is in the clue, so let's say they pick, this is our French yoga poster, which you get, they may pick letter D for dragon, and they do the warrior pose, like dragon wings coming out. And then after they've done the pose, we tell them whether it's in the clue. So it's a way of doing yoga while playing a game at the same time. Kids really like that. And then we have the inclusive yoga, which is a whole weekend talking about yoga for special needs. So including yoga for boys, but also for children on the autism spectrum, children with various special needs, like hearing disabilities, or different tools you can use and strategies that you can use to include all children in your classes. So you can see there's one more, which is our level 2 mastermind. This is where we talk about your business planning and your curriculum design. So it's a lot of self-directed learning under the guidance of your trainers, where you get to work on what you want to do with what you've learned. So if you're a classroom teacher, you may think, well, I want to plan out my classes till, for the next 3 months. If you're someone going into business, you would work on your business plan, and then you would work with other people also working on the same thing, and your trainer would be there to guide you with their experience or my experience, or we have some other trainers in New Orleans and in Toronto. So the level 2 mastermind is fun, and it really lets people work on like getting the word out there and how they're going to build their classes. What a relief it was to not have to try to fit everything into one weekend. And people are really happy that we get to cover all of it. I just want to show you a little bit too about the props that we use. So there's some questions later about how do you get the kids' attention. And it's through using interesting props. So we'll use like the breathing ball, inhale, exhale. And we include this in the themes and dreams. So if you take the themes and dreams module, then you take this home with you. There's a few other, I'll show you some of my favorite props. And if I have a favorite prop, then I try to include it in the course when it's possible. So let me move these back over here. So in the yoga alphabet one, you get a deck of yoga cards to teach with. You take that home with you. It's included in the cost. You get a big alphabet book as well. So for Yoga Wheel of Fortune, I like the big book because it's easier for the kids to see. In the mindfulness training, you get New Age Teachers, meditation for growing minds, activity sheets, and download the audios that Nicole has created for her classroom. And her classroom is amazing. You got to follow her, New Age Teacher, on Instagram for amazing ideas. You get, one of my favorite props is the balancing eagle. And when the balancing eagle flies in, you get the kids' attention. And this is included in the mindfulness module. So if we use a tool a lot, we include it in the registration. And that's one thing that I think is really special about the kids yoga training at Young Yoga Masters. Let me show you again how, share. There we go. Let's go down to this screen. So you get the practicum, you get the business planning. Oh yes, someone asked about insurance, and we do cover that in the level 2 mastermind. It's kind of a long conversation. So I'm going to share with you one of my favorite resources right now. Shout out to the connectedyogateacher.com. And Shannon has a great blog post or article on insurance for yoga teachers. And I will include that in the follow-up link, and it shows like a lot of the different yoga teachers. Someone asked me about insurance, and it varies from province to province and state to state and country to country. So it's a really hard question to answer without knowing where you are. So I'm going to give a little shout out to Shannon and the connectedyogateacher.com and take a look there to see what she recommends. And she has a great list of different insurance companies. The other thing you get in the Young Yoga Masters training is just the personal attention and feedback. So I'm always amazed at how the little breaks, the lunchtime chats, the break time chats where you get to walk up to your trainer and say, I'm wondering about this. What should I do? And this is my particular issue, what should I do? That's what you get more of in a contact hour training, and especially over the 96 hours, you're developing a relationship with your trainer, and you get to learn more. So that's a bit about what does the young, oh, I did that. We have a summer certification coming up in July 14th to the 26th, where you can get the whole 95-hour training in 2 weeks. And it's at the Art Gallery of Burlington, and our practicum is with the Art Gallery of Burlington kids camps that they host during the summer. So at the end of each day, we're going to be teaching kids all the things that we've learned during the day. So it's a great opportunity. Someone asked about costs, and the costs are all on the website, and I'll just show you quickly, but you can look them up here because they are changing. So they're changing on the 26th. I think you will save about $160 if you register before the 26th. These are in Ontario, so there's tax on top of these prices. It's 13%. The cost for the installment plans, so you can pay in 6 installments, is 6 times $333. So our lowest price we've ever offered the training for is if you register for the full certification, and that works out to $1,938 Canadian dollars. What's interesting is that we have people come from all over the world for this. So we have someone registered from Kuwait right now. Other years we've had people from Japan, from Thailand, from other provinces, from New Orleans, from New York and Alberta. It's England. So people do come from all over the world for this training because they want to get it in the 2 weeks. So that's a lot of fun, getting to meet people. And then we all stay connected through the Facebook group afterwards. Okay, so the costs are on the website, and I'll send you the link if you want to look at that in more detail. Let's go back to the full screen mode. So now here are your questions about teaching kids yoga. And the big question, I kind of grouped them together because there are certain themes that come up. So here are some of the themes. How much yoga experience do you need to start learning yoga to teach yoga? I started yoga as an exercise routine a year ago. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I would like to know more about how I can help and teach children's yoga. I would love to know where people tend to teach yoga. So how to get started, how to begin my process. What is the best way to reach the community and advertise for kids yoga? So where to teach? Where's the best place to start? How to approach potential venues and clients to be able to bring yoga practice to children. So these are really good questions. And sorry, I'm getting a message from Zoom, so we can keep going. We don't have to reschedule or restart again. So how to start, where to teach, how much experience do we need? So that is hard to answer because it depends on what experience you're bringing to the table. So there's 3 things I feel that people need to get started. One is to know how to plan and deliver a class from start to finish. So do you know what you're doing? If you got the job, would you know what to do when you got there? So you need to know that. 2, you need the skill to get kids' attention when you're doing an activity and it peaks and the kids start wandering off, and you need to bring them back in again. So the second thing is you need to know how to get the kids' attention, and I'm going to cover a few of my favorite things to do that. And then 3, you need the confidence to teach the yoga and the meditation and the mindfulness activities. So that's where I mentioned some people work in schools. They're fine with kids, but the yoga part they're nervous about. So here's what I recommend to get started on that level. If you don't know how to plan the class or get the kids' attention, I feel what you need is a training that includes a practicum class with actual children. And you're going to see exactly what happens at all phases of the class, even like how to get the kids to get their shoes back on and out the door in time so your next class can come in. So all of that happens when you get a training with real children. Otherwise, it just is a little bit theoretical from the feedback I've received from people who don't have the confidence with what to actually do to deliver the class. For the third part, do you have the confidence to teach the yoga poses? There's a couple things. You need to take a lot of adult classes. So the 95-hour training actually assumes, for yoga, from a Yoga Alliance's point of view, they're assuming that you have your adult 200-hour training. So what you learn in a 200-hour adult training, you don't learn in a kids yoga training. So they're assuming that you have that background in doing yoga. And the easiest way to have it is to just take a lot of classes. Go on retreats. We have a retreat coming up in April in Ontario. You know, like do an immersion of adult yoga and you'll feel better. Plus your kids yoga will improve because of it. Then the next thing you want to do is also take an in-person training, or I recommend an in-person training or a really good other training. I'm sure there's many good ones out there as well. But where you learn how teaching kids yoga is different than teaching adults yoga, because sometimes people go in and they try to teach a kids class the same way they would teach an adult class, and sometimes it's kind of an epic fail because the kids get really bored. So that's where it helps to learn like yoga, Wheel of Fortune, or the balancing eagle, all those tools we just talked about. So you're going to get that in your teacher training, and I'm going to tell you some of them. So depending on which one you need, I recommend different parts, different follow-ups. And so how to start, where to teach, and how to advertise. If you have any questions, I'd love for you to write them in the chat, and I'll go over them at the end. I would love to hear your questions. But I'm hoping that some of these slides are going to answer them. So the best advertising, and this is not just for yoga, it's for so many businesses, is word of mouth advertising. So you start with networking. You just tell everyone what you're doing and how excited you are about it and how much you love it. Like usually for people who are doing yoga, it is their passion. So it's not, you're not even putting anything on. You're just talking about what you love to do. And one other thing I recommend is offering to sub for other kids yoga teachers when needed. And that's how you can get a lot of classes, is by subbing for people. And they'll usually, when they're ready to change to a different class and they're looking for a new teacher, they usually go to their subs first. Where to start? Teach classes at your own kids' school or daycare or your friend's kids' school. So in my case, my very first class I taught was actually through one of my best friends, and her kids were in school, and she was like, I want my kids to have this yoga thing in their life. And so she actually arranged it. And I can think of a few other instances over the years where it was people who I knew who made, you know, the in way to the school for me. So the best approach is through networking and people you know. And then how do you do that is you're always talking about yoga in a positive way. I mean, you don't have to always talk about it, but you know what I mean. And then the other ideas I found have been helpful is teach from your home, rent a space, and just put up posters if you have the space to run from your home, or you can rent a yoga studio, you can rent a church hall, you can rent a community center space, and run the class even if you only have 2 or 3 students. especially at the beginning, you want to build your confidence. And I find that sometimes, I know for me anyways, I wasn't a business person when I started. And I forgot that I'm running a business. And, you know, there aren't a lot of businesses where it doesn't take time to build them. So this is, you're building a business and you kind of have to put on your business person hat occasionally. And remember that it takes like, usually they say it takes like 2 years to build a business. So it takes time to build your confidence as a trainer, and certain things someone can tell you over and over again, but until you do it yourself, um, you're not going to believe it. So you've got to put yourself out there. And in my experience, like, you can run it with 2 or 3 students, and sometimes you'll get that mom or dad who's like a really good networker, and you'll have 2 or 3 students your first few classes, and then they'll go and tell their friends, and all of a sudden, you know, one parent can network for you and fill up a whole class. And I don't even do like give them a free class to give everyone. I find that if the parents believe in it and they feel that it's helping their children, they're just happy to tell others about it. So I haven't even had to do that. So sometimes just starting small, it can just blossom that way very quickly. And then finally, teaching in your local schools, daycares, while your children are at school. So that was for the person who was a stay-at-home mom. Teaching during camps and classes. So in Ontario, we're coming up to March break, and there's an opportunity where daycares or schools might be looking for special programming during the holidays. And what can work is to offer like a sample half-price class, so they get to know you, and they see how much fun the kids are going to have, and they see that you're going to deliver a good class. I don't recommend free. I recommend like a reduced rate, and then increase the rate after they see what they're getting into. So those are my recommendations for where to start. Like I said, we do like a 16-hour course on this in the mastermind, where, you know, we're working on this. It's an in-depth thing. Opportunities for growth. So someone asked, what's a typical day like? What types of career opportunities may open up down the road for a person starting out in this position, assuming they do well? And then how to run a business in the niche market of kids yoga, and how to make a decent income without driving all over the land. So Ashley, I think Ashley's been doing it. She knows about driving all over the land, and it happens. um, so I would say that the reality is that you probably will be driving around quite a bit. That is the nature of the business, unless you are like a few people who decide that they're going to open their own studio, which has its own other costs. And I don't think that's a great first step. I think the first step is to be really confident in your teaching, and then, you know, work towards that, so you have a base of students who are going to come to your studio right away. But you do kind of feel like you're carrying your props in and out of your car, or for me, when I first started, I taught 25 classes a week. I remember that it was like a badge of honor for me, my 25, and I was riding around Toronto on my bicycle, teaching all these classes. So they were all within biking distance from my home, which was great. And then after a while, that got a little tiring, that's for sure. So that's when I moved into, you know, offering the workshops and expanding what I was offering. So you're also going to spend time at your computer making posters and contacting new classes, and you really have to realize that you're starting a business. And for some people, that's what they have to realize. And for some people, you may think, I have this other job, and I just want to do this as a side opportunity to fulfill myself. And that's really nice too. That's a really nice way to do it too. Opportunities for growth, though, is that you start to weed out the classes where you're only going for a 30-minute class. And often the rate of pay starts, you know, at $40 or $50 per hour per class at the beginning. So what you do eventually, like the Montessori school I taught at, I went there for 2.5 hours, so that every time I went to a location, I worked my way up to the point where I wouldn't go somewhere unless I was making $100. So to do that, sometimes you're teaching 2 or 3 classes in a row. So that's the opportunity for growth in that way. Opportunities down the road, you can start offering professional development to the school staff. That's a great opportunity. Offering leadership training or 200-hour training. So one of our graduates and I worked on a teen and tween leadership program, and that she offers through her studio and now sells through Ambassador Yoga. And that's really good. She has high enrollment. She was running 2 classes per week of the tween and teen leadership program. And then the idea, if you're a yoga teacher, if you have the qualifications, you could start to train teens to be yoga teachers. So offering yoga teacher training down the road means thinking smartly about what kind of training you're investing in now, so that you're investing in the training that allows you to do this later on. And that's where Yoga Alliance comes in. And that's something for you to really consider and realize there's a choice you're making at the beginning. And then you're probably at some point down the road going to develop your own teacher training for kids yoga. So new teachers will be coming up and older teachers will be retiring, and you're going to want to develop your own training weekend, maybe your own registered school, write your own manuals if you have the qualifications, maybe training with becoming a trainer with a school like Young Yoga Masters. And keep in mind that the school, like for Young Yoga Masters, we hire new trainers who are graduates of our program because they know the program. So it's hard to become a trainer with a school who you haven't actually trained with. So we're just opening up at Young Yoga Masters to new trainers, because usually what happens for me is I've traveled around quite a lot, and now I'm ready to let the new teachers who have 5 to 10 years experience come in and start doing the training. Then possibly opening a studio, partnering with the studio, and then getting creative with your own program, like Claire from Grimsby did with the tween and the teen leadership program. There may be some programs that no one's thought of that you might want to get on board with or create. So this is an interesting question from Carolyn from Australia. Do you offer online training? I'm from Australia and guessing you're an internationally based company. I guess I am internationally based now, but there's really just 2 of us at the company, and our trainers are all contractors. So for me, I do offer 2 online trainings. There's the Yoga Alphabet download, which is 2 manuals that people can download and do as a self-study program. And I offer the Yoga for Boys sun salutation with Yoga Man versus the stressor, doing the sun salutation. And those are coloring pages that people can download. And I do that, but I don't give a certificate for those because it's all completely self-study. And there was a point where I had to think about what I would offer, and I chose that I'm going to really specialize in the 95-hour training with my time. So when you run a business, sometimes, I know for me, I started trying to do everything, and then there's a certain point where you realize you can't do everything. And then I thought, well, what do I really love doing? And for me, I love doing the 95-hour training. I like having long-term relationships with people and guiding them through like a longer-term process, much more than just doing a short weekend training. So that's my niche, and you will also develop your niche as you build your business. But in terms of what do I offer in terms of online training, so I have the 2 downloads. I will send a link to those in the follow-up email. And I think I have to. Okay. Can I do training or teach with my restrictions? So this is one person who had a knee replacement, and this one I enjoyed, who's in her late 50s, because I'm in my 50s too. Is it too late for me to embark on something like this? So I think you probably know my answer is yoga is for everyone. Our training is about connecting body, mind, spirit, no matter who. And if I said no to a teacher, then what about all the children that I've taught who use a walker or who use crutches or who have hearing disabilities? Like I don't want to send the message to anyone that you can't do yoga. So one of my favorite quotes is this saying, saying you're too stiff or too old to do yoga is like saying you're too dirty to take a shower. It just doesn't make sense, does it? So I recommend that yoga is for everyone, and if someone can't do the poses, then they get the kids to teach the poses. And you use the coloring pages and all the different activity sheets, or you use your frog alphabet book to show the pose. So there's lots of ways to teach, even if you can't do a pose. So this was a good question too. What are cautions about kids' bodies and muscles that are of concern at the different and different at various ages? So this is, again, trying to take a quick, something we cover in the training about development, and just give you 3 short answers. So preschool age, a concern is that preschoolers usually have weak abdominal muscles, not a lot of abdominal strength, but they have a lot of flexibility. And so they, from my experience, I've noticed that they tend to not have stamina because their muscles aren't as developed. So they tend to fall out of tree pose easier. Or one time we were doing a sun salutation, and one of the girls just, like, she was doing it fine, and then she just got tired and just kind of collapsed onto her head. And that was like too long. So you've got to shorten the times that you're doing things. There's a pose called bundle roll where you're kind of rolling like a log across the floor. If you do that with preschoolers, you're going to hear like clunk, clunk, like heads just clunking on the floor. So you don't do that one with preschoolers. As if you do it and you notice that someone may not have the abdominal strength to keep their head up, then you would change it as soon as you're listening for that, you're looking for that, because kids develop differently as well. So you may have an older kid who hasn't done a lot of exercise. School age concerns. One thing I noticed is a lot of inflexibility in the hands and wrists, because with the phoning and texting video games, there's a lot of forward bend in the fingers and the wrists. So doing this. So then when we come to poses where you're flattening your hand, like downward dog or cobra pose, they start to hurt. The wrists start to hurt for people, especially school age kids. So that's a concern. So there's a few things you can do, is to shorten the times or to start using props. So you can have your hands over, like they have these little pads that you can put under your hand to support your wrist. But sometimes you can even roll up your yoga mat and have your wrists on the end of your rolled up yoga mat. And then a quick one for teens, you want to avoid inverted poses during menstruation. So again, something we cover more in the teacher training, but I wanted to answer Diane's question. Okay, so now I'd like to open it up to you. So someone asked, if you could have only 3 tools going into a kid's yoga class, what would they be? And then another person asked, my question is, how do you make the children listen to you? How do I engage them? So before I answer, I would like you guys to answer for a bit, to put in the chat, what do you think? What would you answer for that? So if you could only bring 3 tools, what would your top 3 be? So write your answers in the chat, and I'm going to try to find the chat. Here it is. Oh, good. Thank you. Oh, the cutting out. Oh, sorry, Jesse. I just noticed the audio is cutting out a bit. Oh, okay, now great. What barriers did you encounter trying to get into schools, and how did you deal with that? Okay, so I'm going to save that to the end, so thank you. So who's going to tell me what would their favorite prop be? Anyone already teaching who has a favorite prop? Okay, so I don't see an answer. Okay, so I think maybe no one's actually teaching. I haven't started teaching, but the ball for inhale, exhale is the breathing ball. Exactly. That one is really good, the breathing ball. So what were my answers? Okay, so my answers are music. So if I could only have three things, I like this. It's like a deserted island question, you know? If I could only have three things. So music, I probably play at least 2 songs every class I teach. And we go over the songs in the training. Um, the other thing I use, even the audio tracks, Nicole's audio tracks are great. Um, the other thing I use is the alphabet cards. And why is that? Because I want to learn the kids' names as quickly as possible. So when I go into the class, I'm going to say, "Oh, Jesse's in class. Let's look up J," and then I find the J card, which is jog, and we would have the kids jog on the spot and then freeze, and then they're doing a balancing pose with one knee up, and then I'd say jog, and then I would start to learn, okay, Jesse, jog pose. It would give me a way to go through each child's name and start to learn each child's name. So knowing names is really helpful in an ongoing class. If it was a one-time class, I wouldn't do that. I would probably play a word game with them with the cards. And then the other thing I would do is bring in my yoga bag. So this goes as well into how to get the kids' attention. And just a little thing that I quoted myself here. You can't make children listen or make them pay attention. So when that question of like, how do you make children? You kind of have to remember, like, you can't make them. You know, the what you don't have control over them to make them do it. So all you can do is pique their interest and intrigue them so that they want to listen. So one of the things I use is my yoga bag, and I'm going to show you what I do. So let me share my big screen. So I'll go into the yoga class, and one of my routines is to go in. I've got my bag over my shoulder, and it becomes a routine. So the kids will be like, "Oh, what's in your bag today?" And I'll sit at the front of the class with my bag. This is a bag I sell at the yoga show, but I just got it from Vistaprint. It has some yoga characters on it. And I sit and I'll wait, and I'll be like, "Oh, I've got something in my bag." And then when some of the kids start listening, I'll say, "Oh, do you have a guess what I've brought in my bag today? What could it be?" And then all the other kids start getting to intrigue, like, "Oh, I wonder what it is in my bag." And then when everyone is listening, that's when I will reach into my bag and pull out yoga stickers today. Is everyone getting a yoga sticker? Let's look at what these stickers have on them. These stickers you get in the kids yoga um, 8-hour workshop with chakras, families, and kids. So I have something in my bag. It might be the breathing ball. It might be the balancing eagle. It might be my yoga cards. But each class we have a little routine where the kids wonder, what did I bring in today? So I don't make them pay attention, but I've created a structure so that they want to pay attention, because every time I come in, something interesting is going to come out of the bag. So that, I guess, I don't know if you could call that a prop, but for me, that little structure of the reveal has worked very well for me. So that would be my third item that I would bring into the bag, and also how I get kids' attention. So let's go back to sharing the screen. So, oh, and I just wanted to show you Oops, I should have stayed on here. This is my speaker. I bought this one from Best Buy. It's great. I bought it. It was kind of expensive. It was, I think, around $400, but I think they've gone down in price. It's a JBL Extreme. But this one I bought because I was teaching in a large gym, and it's very portable and it's very durable. And I needed big sound. If I'm going into a classroom, like there's a lot of really tiny speakers that do well and aren't as heavy to carry around as this baby. So it depends on how big your room is, what kind of speaker you get. But there's so many great speakers now that will give you everything you need for your class, and some of them are $50. So they're really good deals. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what that looked like. So those are my 3 things, and that's how I engage them. So I'll put on a song. Sometimes the kids are all going all over the place, and I just put a song on and the music gets them, and when we start doing a song that we all know. We cover a lot of songs in the training. And if you go onto Spotify, you can actually follow me on Spotify, and you can look at my kids yoga playlist under Aruna. I will send the link in my follow-up email. Okay. So this question, I've got it in 3 steps. Any tips on yoga for middle schoolers or high schoolers? Again, something we cover in the teacher training a lot longer, but here's a short answer. So with this age group in our teen leadership program, they want to be seen as leaders. They're the teachers of the future. So I make a big point of saying, like, one day I won't be teaching yoga and some of you will be teaching the yoga of the future. So I teach them to be teachers, not to be students. So I teach them how to become teachers. I let them teach the poses in the class adult style. So we're moving away from all the playfulness. We're not barking like dogs or that, unless we're being goofy and silly. We have lots of discussion time and lots of relaxation time. So I would say that's the 3 keys for teaching middle schoolers and high schoolers. Question. In my area, there are a fair number of baby and me classes and kids classes, but not much for crawlers until about age 4. Any tips for teaching this age group? So crawlers to age 4. So this is where I taught in the Montessori school for 18 years, this age group, crawlers to age 4. 30-minute is a good class length. I found that went by fairly quickly. We'd do a warm-up song, we'd do a bunch of poses, and then we'd do like 7 minutes sometimes of relaxation with the music because kids really like the songs. And they could meditate or relax. And then we would have our little closing routine. If you have longer, I got hired by a school. They wanted me to come in for 60 minutes for 3 classes for 60 minutes. So as a business, I took the class, even though 60 minutes is a long time for that class. But at that point, I had been teaching for 10 years, so it wasn't hard for me. You know, I read a storybook, and I found other ways to fill the time with, like, mindful crafts. There's more crafts and books and recommendations in the training. Lots of repetition. So we're repeating the same class, usually for like three weeks or so, and then usually I'm the one who wants to change it. And then finally, oops, sorry, I went ahead too fast. I like exploring feelings like surprise, happy. So I'm going to give you an example. So I would bring in, let's say, my yoga deck, and we would do lion pose, which in the yoga alphabet is the zoo pose. So you know that one where you go like, and so we would all do the lion, and all the kids would go, and then me as the teacher, I like using voices and acting things out. So I'd be like, oh no, oh, I just saw a whole bunch of lions. Oh, I'm so scared. Oh, what can I do? What can I do? And then the kids who have known me, because we do a big breath as part of every class, the little kids will start going, big breath, and I'll be like, oh, I'm so scared. Oh no, what will I do? Okay, big breath. Okay, let me try it. Oh, oh, it's helping a little bit. Let me try it again. Hey, that one helped even more. And then, hey, wait a minute. Hey, you're not real lions. You were tricking me. Hey, I do feel better. That big breath helped me see that you're not real lions. You tricked me. And then, of course, they all think that's hilarious. And then what we talked about, like, how do you make kids pay attention? You don't. You intrigue them. So they're like, oh, we tricked you. And, you know, at that point, the problem becomes the kids all want to come and hug you and stuff like that. But that's a good problem to have. So we have hugs at the end of the class with preschoolers. Our closing routine, and with that age, you're still allowed to hug them in schools because we know that kids need hugs and that helps them grow. And so fortunately in the Montessori school at that age, we could still I would give everyone a hug at the end of the class. So that age group is a lot of fun. So becoming a kids yoga teacher. So we're at the end of the questions, except for the chat. So let me go back to the chat, and there was a question rather. What barriers did you encounter trying to get into schools, and how did you deal with that? Well, that was from Melanie. Thanks, Melanie. I would say schools, I've found the biggest barrier is that they don't have a budget. So they would love to have the yoga, but who pays for it? So when I've taught in schools, it's often been like coming in for the teacher's budget for a short series. So sometimes schools may have like, you know, each teacher gets a little fund depending on how many kids they have in their class. So I might come in for one class or just like March break or just a few times a year. But the other way that I've gotten around that is when the parents have gotten involved, then you can use the school property and the kids will pay for the class. So I did that after school. I had to have a teacher oversee the class. So that's a barrier, is finding a teacher who's willing to stay, because you're not going to be allowed to be there without one of their official staff on present. So that teacher actually stayed. We did the class in the music room, and a parent organized the class, and the teacher stayed for the class after school because she was marking, but she actually wasn't in the room. Her classroom was across from the music room. So I taught the kids in the music room. All the kids paid a rate, and I think that class, the music room didn't hold so many, so I think we had to cap it around 12 kids. So they paid a little more, like $7 or $8 a class. But I know other teachers who will teach at lunchtime in the school, and they're experienced teachers, so they can cap it at 20 kids, and they charge $5 a class for a series. And that means they're making $100 for like a 30-minute class at lunchtime, which is not bad if you're not traveling too far. So the barriers are often, the money, trying to find the funding to pay for it. And a quick question came in. Do you use sound bowls or musical instruments? Also, would the parents occasionally stay with the children? Would this depend on the age of the children? So yes, I have a chime. Oh, thank you. I have a singing bowl, for sure. So that's where a weekend training is great, because you're going to learn some tools, and an online course is great. You get tools. But what happens, I found, and what I hear from our grads, is that you're going into a school 40 times a year, or like one daycare I taught at, I went through the whole year, even including the summer. So now you need 52 classes a year times 18 years, right? So you need a lot of ideas. So, you're going to learn some ideas in a training, and then you'll you'll use them, and then you'll be ready for new ideas. So I mean, I have, like, I've been doing this for a long time, so I have like shelves of props, and I need storage for my business, because you're going to try out different props, not just because the kids change, but as a teacher, you can't do the same thing over and over again for 18 years, or you kind of like, you get kind of bored. so you're going to want to have new ideas. So I definitely have, I do the singing bowl, I play the ukulele, and I've brought the uke into my class. The problem is that it's hard to strum and show things with your hands, so I usually just do that for an opening song, and then I put it away, so I won't play the whole class with it. Would the parents occasionally stay with the kids? I encourage the parents not to stay with the kids, but occasionally there'll be an exception where the child is better off if the parent stays. So then I'm willing to make exceptions, but I try to generally ask the parents to leave if possible, because kids and parents behave differently around their kids and parents, where you'll have a child who behaves one way in a classroom, and then when the parents show up, the whole dynamic changes. So generally, if it's a kids class, I don't encourage it. Mind you, I taught an adult child class for many years at a community center, and then it was centered around adult and children. So that's another style of class. We cover that in the training for 4 hours, so it's a longer answer than here, but those classes are a lot of fun too. So I hope that helps. To Jessie, thanks Jessie, and then thank you. Oh, thank you everyone. So I think we're near the end, so thank you. I think we got it recorded today. If you're thinking of teacher training, I just wanted to leave you with a few food for thought. Look for a training that's both fun and practical. So you want to observe real children in a class. So this picture is from a practicum I had with in my kids class. We were doing one of the activities called the teacher puppet. And so you get to see me teaching in the class, and it's fun to see different trainers who have experience teach. Then I really recommend you get experience teaching a class from start to finish, and this is an example of a practicum from our training, where there's a team of 3 teachers, and each teacher is teaching part of it and all together they've got a lot of children in this class. So you're teaching from start to finish, but you're not on your own, right? And then also to develop your skills to teach mindfulness and meditation to kids. So if you can find a training that is not where you're just like taking a manual, going off and reading it on your own, ideally you're also getting that, what they call in the Yoga Alliance terminology, techniques, training, and practice. So if you're going to teach kids how to do mindful breathing, then you're going to sit with your trainer and the other people in the course, and you're going to do mindful breathing. And then you're going to ask questions about what came up for you. Then you're going to ask questions about, what will happen. And then people are going to share their experiences teaching kids. Really try to look for that techniques, training, and practice, as well as the practicum in your training, so that you've not just read about it, but you've actually done it. So that's what I will leave you with for some food for thought. I'm going to move to the last. Am I? There we go. Oh, yes. This is a graduation picture from the class. It's also really nice just to connect with real people in the training. It's fun. It's, it's all ages. I like this one because it has a man in it. I love to see more men taking the training. And plus you connect with other teachers, so when you're in our support group after, you get to know who people are, and people are asking questions about what they can do. And finally, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the questions. And I would love to see you at the summer certification if that is the right thing for you this summer. And I will send you a replay of the webinar so you can go over all the different ideas. And I'll send you some links to that we talked about in the webinar. And if something comes up for you afterwards, if you have a question, please feel free to send it to me. And if there's no other questions in the chat room, let's see. Any final comments in the chat room before we go on? Oh, there is a chat question. Oh, can you tell us more about the retreat in the spring? Thank you. Thank you for asking. Yes, certainly. I do this retreat because I need it. I love this retreat. So in the spring, it's on my website. I'm looking under yoga classes, Kundalini Spring Getaway. So the retreat in the spring is April 12th to 14th. So let me share this screen with you. Share, here we go. Here it is. Okay. So this is the Kundalini Yoga Spring Getaway. It's a style of yoga that's very kid-friendly because it has a lot of movement, a lot of noise, even in the adult style of yoga, like bundle roll. We do an adult yoga. So I find I get a lot of food for thought from doing Kundalini yoga, especially the meditations and the activities. In the spring, this one is at Ecology Retreat Center, which is in Hockley Valley, Ontario. And I mentioned I teach at it because there are 7 teachers. Oh, there's the fire pit outside. There are 7 teachers who teach at it. So I teach 2 classes, I think it is. But then I'm attending classes. So do I have a picture of us teachers? Let's see. Oh, there's the hiking trail. There's Dea, Nirmal, myself. Oh, and I don't have the other teachers up yet. It's on my to-do list. But it's very social. So Kundalini yoga is called the householders yoga. And it's meant for people who are living in the world. So this year we'll probably have about 50 people at the retreat, which is a lot of fun. People make a lot of connections. The food is amazing, no dishes. And it's only about an hour outside of Toronto. So it's, if you'd love to like really get tons of yoga, meditation practice. I'm actually also a continuing education provider with Yoga Alliance. So if there's any yoga teachers who need, they're called continuing education units, CEUs, I can, I have a track where you can get 10 CEUs, which is all the contact CEUs you need in one weekend as well. So you can let me know about that, and I can explain that track to you more. But it's just a lovely weekend away. It's very relaxing, and you know, there's this saying that Yogi Bhajan, who taught Kundalini yoga, is like to revolve your life around the summer and winter solstice retreats. But I find that like just coming and doing a whole weekend of yoga like this is very similar, where it's like you fill yourself up, and you just do a lot of yoga meditation for your own practice, and you just strengthen yourself as a teacher, and then it gives you the strength to go out and start teaching again. And then you need to fuel yourself like that. You know, he recommended twice a year. So if you haven't done it this year, come and join us, April 12th to 14th. That is on the website. So under Young Yoga Masters, yoga classes, Kundalini Yoga Spring Getaway. So thanks for asking about that. And did any other chats come in while I was talking? Okay. So in that case, let me go back to, I forgot how to go back to my final page. Here we are. My final thank you page. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you being here, and I will send you a follow-up email, and I'm pretty sure we got this call recorded. And let me know if you have any other questions. And I hope that so many children can benefit from you going out and delivering some wonderful yoga experiences to them. So thank you very much. Satnam, namaste, and I hope to see you soon. And this is the end of the meeting. Bye. Oh, or is it? There we go. Bye.